Marco, you found your way back home with the ZBrush team here onto the green screen stage in sunny Burbank, California. I'm here with Paul Gabriel, Louis Tucci, and Marco Plouffe finally makes his way to the ZBrush Summit. How are you?
I'm pretty good, pretty good. It's really nice to be back here after, well, the last time that we had the event, so it's pretty cool. New stage also, it's pretty rad.
Yeah.
Pretty rad, you guys.
He's no stranger. This is number 3 for the Summit for you.
Repeat
right?
offender.
This is number 3?
Exactly.
The repeat. I think you're actually maybe the only one that's been 3 times that I can think of.
That's cool.
So you're in a special...
Repeats aside, he's been working with the 4 Horsemen on a new project, is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. That's been like the huge project lately, so it's cool because I'll be like showing a little bit of that today, or at least like I'll use that as like my platform to for my presentation.
Man, it's good. I'm happy to be here, locked and loaded, and the hits keep on coming. I feel like the most blessed person on planet Earth. I get to
I'm going to try and zip it up as much as I can. You know I can't, but I'm looking forward to what Marco's going to be showing everybody.
You like your hard surface. It's no secret on this planet that Paul Gabriel is a big fan of hard surface modeling. And Marco, we're not going to chat over you. We're going to let you take it away now. Give the people at home what they're waiting for. They're not waiting to hear us. They want to hear from you. Take it away, Marco Plouffe.
All right, cool. All right. Well, I mean, so it's the 3rd time I come here, but for people who don't know me, I'll still present myself. My name is Marco Plouffe. I worked for 12 years in the industry as a character artist, and as an artist, I worked in like a few studios like BioWare, ADOS, but pretty rapidly I created my own company called Chaos Masons with Cedric Seo. That was 8 years ago. And basically, I'm like the co-founder of the company. I'm also a business manager, an art director, an artist there. And we've been pretty blessed to be able to work with a lot of like AAA studios doing character art. So, so that's pretty cool. And yeah, in my career as an artist or with Chaos Masons, I've been able to actually work with a few like pretty cool projects and some giants of the industry and whatnot. So like our most recent project was Gotham Knight, where we did like, I don't know, like easily like 60 characters for the project. And I mean, they turned out pretty good. Like I'm pretty happy, like and some important characters as well, so.
You say 60, 6-0. I want
yeah,
the people
6-0.
to make sure they get this.
How big was the team that you?
Just him.
It's just him and Cedric.
Yeah, exactly. No, we were like a team of, we started with like a team of 10, then like we went down to a team of 4, like on a more continuous basis. But it was a pretty long project, so like we didn't need to be like a huge team to accomplish all that. But you know what, in the end, it looked pretty cool. So like I'm very happy about that. And so yeah, that was the last project. There's like so much more to come that I'm super excited about, but I can't talk
Zip
about
upper
it
lip,
right
he says. Look at that. He even did the gesture.
You've got plenty to share today, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. But like overall, with Chaos Mason and everything, like we've worked on stuff like The Witcher, Overwatch, Apex, Borderlands, Outlast, Baldur's Gate, PUBG, and of course I worked for Mass Effect and Deus Ex since we've like as a personal artist, but that's a lot of video game, right?
Yeah, that was a lot to take in right there.
That was a lot to take in. I didn't take a breath before doing the list.
Just pause for a second.
Man, I can't believe that you and Cedric founded this 8 years ago, too. That was a mind blower for me, too, man. 8 years ago. Holy
time flies by, seriously.
Yeah.
So, no, we're pretty lucky. I mean, we've put the efforts in, and we're happy, like, to be able to show, like, everything we've accomplished so far. And, I mean, it's just going up.
Yeah, we applaud you.
They've killed it. I remember the days when at the convention center with Marco, me and Marco, like 9 years ago, probably 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Cedric too, I think 13 years ago. Us roaming around at SIGGRAPH.
Yeah, one of the time we went, it was like pretty much at the beginning of the company. So yeah, long.
Congratulations, man.
Thanks, man.
Same to you, Cedric, if you're watching.
Keep going. And he's got a cool hat on today with that. It's under these lights, it's like a hot pink. I like it.
Yeah, it's pretty contrasty with the stuff, but I like it.
I dig it.
It's me peacocking, basically.
Yeah. Well, I don't know anything about peacocking. Stay tuned. Here we go.
There we go. So, so yeah, I've talked about a lot of video games and stuff, right? But the thing is, like, lately my passion has been with collectible figures a lot. For people that follow me, like you've seen it, like I've been working a lot on on statues that can be printed and everything. And I've always did that in my career, but like in terms of like spending my own time on my own projects, I've been pulling a lot of efforts into creating like IPs that can be printed and whatnot. So that's kind of like a bit of what I'll be showing today. And the reason why I'm so passionate about the collectible industry is because video games are all fun, right? But something I really love to do is to be able to create kind of like like a moment with the character, like having him in a pose and like some
Snapshot time.
composition. Yeah, exactly. Kind of try to tell like a story in one frame and that sort of stuff. And I feel this is something you can accomplish. And if you can print it and paint it afterward and make it look cool, well, it's even better. So when I was asked to come here, I was like, okay, well, one thing that could be cool is to show like a little bit of that, but make sure things like stay relevant to like the video game industry as well. And basically, I told myself I could show a project I've been working on and a few of the like methodologies and the techniques that I actually used to get to the end product, which was a printed sculpture. But the thing is that pretty much like 90% of what I have to show is applicable to video game as well. So either if you like video games or if you like the collectible industry, like I have nice things to show.
It's good to see that and hear that overlap is about to be demonstrated because we know it and maybe now the general public will know it even more.
Happens a lot.
Yeah, well, I mean, people ask me that question often, and it's the same thing I say. It's like you can pretty much approach it the same way for a long time, and then at some point, like you choose what
fork.
Yeah, what fork you take. But a lot can be done before that. So yeah, just before I start showing, I get into like the core of this. Some might know the Four Horsemen already. It's a series of character I've been working on for a long time. It's the thing you can see on the screen right now.
Also a stable in wrestling in the 1980s, but that's a different Four Horsemen.
Yeah, exactly. But it's inspired, let's say.
Yeah, Paul Gabriel. Woo!
But so I've been like, this was my first group of character that I created, and basically they were meant to exist into like a world that I worked in, like behind the curtain, so like what that world is and like the characters that could live in it and whatever. And I basically created this website called neo-apocalypse.com, where people can learn about this universe. And this is a universe where the Four Horsemen live, basically. And I've been created this other group of characters called the Archangels, on screen right now, which are basically like the sequel in the story. And I'm basically just creating the story to have like these characters exist in the world and have some backbone for whatever other series of character I'll be creating afterwards. And the thing that I'm the most proud about this project is that it captured the interest of a company that's now a collaborator of mine called XM Studios. And we've been able to produce these characters into printed statues and everything.
Victory.
And they look like pretty rad. I just want to show you something here.
Superb.
It's a little teaser. Some of you might have seen it already, but it's basically just like introducing the first character of the series called War from the Four Horsemen. And what you see right now is basically the actual statue printed and painted by XM. So it's my design, it's XM's production. And I'm really happy to be able to say that it's the first of the four that we're producing. It's out on pre-orders right now. I tell you, seriously, it's like one of my biggest accomplishments. I'm so happy of like.
Congratulations.
I bow to you, sir.
Yeah.
Well done. Well
And
done.
they really did a great job for like the production and everything. So seriously, it's really cool. So if you ever want to learn more about Neo-Apocalypse, because I mean, I'll get to the good stuff now. But if ever you want to learn more about the characters of that universe and have some cool renders and ways to like view the characters and everything, just go on neo-apocalypse.com, go check it out. You'll be able to see the characters. You'll be able to actually also pre-order the characters as well.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm
And
sure.
if you're a video game geek like me, you'll like to know that they all have their own stats. They're all attack
you get this?
powers and
he
this
made
and that.
stats for them all. Like,
Yeah.
what's their strengths, their agility.
Scroll up again. Let's see. Never mind the stats. I want to
We
see
need a
death again.
backstory for them all.
The what?
Look at this death again. Show the death again. Oh my goodness. La muerte.
Yeah, this is one of the
Oh
four.
boy. Sold.
Yeah. So I've been having a lot of fun, basically.
Wow.
I've been having a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So-
You're killing it. It looks, they're amazing.
Yeah,
They're
thanks, man. Thanks.
breathtaking. Beautiful.
Really great.
And now, boof, straight transition to ZBrush, where you
this
can
thing.
see the actual sculpture.
That's
So-
the sculpture for the statue you just showed.
Yeah, exactly.
Way to look at this.
So basically, I'll be using like a few of these models to show my process today, and I'll be starting by explaining like a bit about how I went for like designing them, or at least finding like the main like general idea for these characters. Although like I'm not necessarily like a concept artist or anything, there's still like a process that I like to use for just giving me like a bit of a stepping stone before I actually go in ZBrush. So I'll just really, really rapidly show you this image right here. As many of us do, I always start by gathering references and that sort of stuff. And really like, even if I don't really have like a specific idea of what I'm looking for, I'm just trying to get inspired by things that I find and everything. Maybe that I had an idea of like making the 4 Horsemen because it's a theme that I like. And since I like to do hard surface, I knew I wanted to like make it with this kind of like visual. But I really started with just like capturing a lot of things that for me had some kind of like, whatever, like just something that inspires me, even if it's just a little detail of like an image or that sort of stuff. And this is, by the way, like a very short version of my reference. Like there's much more images normally, but still, I just do that, and it kind of like helps me to like daydream about like where I want to go with things, without me doing like anything using my pen or that sort of stuff.
You do this at the beginning of whatever you're trying to conceptualize?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm trying to find like just like a one-liner concept that is going to be like a driving force to go forward with everything.
Sure.
And doing this actually kind of like helps me to unlock things in my head and that sort of stuff. So this is really like the first phase of it. And afterwards, like I said, not a concept artist, but still I like to just push a little bit more in doing like some small like thumbnails and that sort of stuff, just to see if like the vision that I have in my head just translates, at least in this very early stage, because thumbnails you can do them in like a few seconds and that sort of stuff. So I just go through that, but I don't really overstay my welcome with thumbnails, because at the end of the day I'm a 3D artist, so I'll jump like pretty rapidly into
You're going to thumbnail in ZBrush.
into 3D. Yeah, exactly. I'll thumbnail in ZBrush, and this is where like the exciting stuff, like at least for me, really like starts, right? But this is like a good way to just make it clear in my head where I want to go with things. And at the end of it, like the bottom section here is basically just like a few images that I find represents the best what I'm going for, and this will be the like most abridged version of the idea. And that's pretty much like all it is for everything that's like before ZBrush. But
I just want to stop you for a second. That model on the screen that you have is 290 million polygons.
Yeah. It's by the way, a pretty good computer that you have here to be able to run this scene, because like there's a lot happening in here. And of course, I mean, I don't work on everything at the same time like this. Like I chop it off in like pieces.
How many subtools Paul Gabriel wants to know?
What does it say?
I don't know. I mean, right now there's like 138, but this is not even the real amount, because I merged things together for the final scene,
working model.
basically. So it's pretty catastrophic at the end how much.
But I noticed on hard surface you use a lot more subtools in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
Than you do in organic, I'd say.
Yeah, exactly. So thanks for like the folders and everything, because that really like helps to sort it out.
Right there.
Yeah, especially when I need to do like there you
300 million polygons. This guy.
So, but you know, at the end of the day, if I want to do like switch outs, like the hand just changed here, or like the head just changed with the folders, it's just really nice to be able to just like do those switch outs and stuff, especially in the collectible industry, because it's a thing, right? To have switch
different
outs,
hands, different heads.
Stuff. So yeah, no, basically that's.
Look at that.
Yeah, just basically.
Yeah.
Just another day in the.
Just another day in
my
office for
presentation.
Marco.
So just do that, and like there you go.
We're done. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming. So this is like this is a demonstration of the end product, but of course, like everything starts somewhere more humble, and basically this is like a good starting point to show you like where the whole process goes. And from the thumbnail that I showed you earlier, like I'll still go through like having my characters in T-pose, A-pose, whatever you want to call them. And for doing a lineup, something that I thought was very interesting to do is to start even like earlier with these characters. This is like something that can actually get, like it takes more time to actually go through everything, but I like to have my characters be like constructed with layers, basically. And I always start a bit like I would do with like a human character that has armor or everything. So I'll just start with what does the character look like if he was, in quotes, naked as an android. And I also work on this like blocking the 4 characters at the same time, because since there's a group, they're also like a unit,
Right.
as like even the four of them together are a unit, and they have to have like their own differences and their body archetype and that sort of stuff. So like I'll start like very normally with like a human-based mesh. Maybe if I was doing like a beast, I would start from a sphere, right? But might as well start with a humanoid figure. And what I do, or at least what I did, is to be able to save on time, the way that I like to layer the character is to use polypaint to really break what is like more like the underneath, maybe like the synthetic muscles and that sort of stuff. And then I'll go like a little bit more of a gray, and I'll use it to for everything that's more like maybe like the cloth that's holding things together, a bit like fascia if you want. And then I'll use a lighter polypaint just to express what's really like over as like the top surface of the character. And for me, this is like really a quick way to really cut into anything that would be more like time consuming for creating like at least like the body of the character. Because it's like, there's all these tools to create like many like assets and stuff, but I don't think it's like right now the moment really to do those things. When you're exploring, when you're looking for shapes, you really want to use like what's the quickest. So for one, I'll use polypaint like this. And also at some point, I'll start working on like the layers that would be on top of the character here. And the layers here, I don't necessarily use like a lot of subtool anyway. And just to give you an example here, like, okay. So you can see like the different colors. They're basically like all the layers that I will be adding on top. For example, if I click on this, this is basically a mesh that was hidden inside of the character. I'll do a little demonstration afterwards. But it was a layer that was kind of like hidden in the character, and I just like extruded the shapes out of the character, trying to define like what would be like the armor on top. But it's pretty much like all one subtool anyway, except maybe for like the shoulders that you can see were made of like actually two subtools here. Just trying to say that like I try to be very like efficient in terms of like not creating too much stuff that can be in the way. And yeah, that's like how I'm able to pretty much get to, like, for example, this result within like maybe like a day or two, like for like the blocking of this character.
Right what you have on screen now is in a day or two.
Yes, well, I mean, the underneath of the character was like a day.
The whole thing is a day or two? All right.
Well, I had a pretty good idea of what I was going for.
Okay.
Right? Like, you know, sometimes it takes
Max is going to say I worked 4 hours each one of those days. That's
yeah, well, I mean, you need to be like, I'm saying like 8 hours full time.
Yeah.
Really
I started from a sphere, and I got this in 4 hours, and here it is, enjoy.
Well, you start from the human character, so.
Yeah. Here we go, this guy.
Jeez.
But seriously, sometimes I'll give myself the chance to explore further, and I'll just like put it to the trash and start over and do something else, right? So
I think that's good. Let go.
Yeah, exactly.
Let go, and then start again. You'll probably discover
and that's why I don't want to spend more than maybe like a day or two for like doing a whole thing like this, because like maybe if I'm going to scrap it, then it's like, well, I need to spend it like
Don't
again.
get married to it, as I say. Don't get too married to it.
Yeah, exactly. And basically all of the characters will I'll do the same thing until I have like...
So you create this, in essence, almost skeleton pattern polypaint thing for all your meshes to start with, for the most part, or just for these?
Well, I mean, since they're a group, and I wanted to find like a way that they're unified in their design, I actually went and I made them like naked. But if I was to do like a one-off character that you never see under everything, I'm not necessarily always going to spend like this amount of time. But since it's like something more like a group, I was like, that's worth it. Plus, like I thought it was fun. So even if it's not like the maximum efficiency, I thought that, yeah, that could be cool. And I didn't really know also how much armor I wanted to put on them. So I was like, well, at least I'll have what's under the armor already done. No, and it's all blocking, right? So it's like, I didn't spend like that much time on it. But yeah, so just to go into like demo mode for a second right here, and I'll just take this character. I'll split this off right now. And what I want to do is I just want to show you what I was talking about earlier, where like what I do when I start concepting. Well, for this part, I mean, it's already done. Basically, this is just using clay buildup, dam standard to find like the things, and using polypaint. So I kind of like explained that. But to build on top of this, the way that I work, and it didn't really change from like when I started to do 3D, is that I will duplicate this character. I'll just make sure there's no like.
Sorry, I don't want to
layers.
interrupt you, but I have this
Yeah.
question that's probably nagging a lot of people. Did you specifically make that base for this project, or is that something that you do typically the way this looks?
Oh, this is a base mesh that I use all the time.
Okay.
Like all the time. I have like a few, but they're all
Great.
pretty much just like a certain like archetype of body. So maybe like I'll have like a muscular one,
Sure.
a more like skinny one, a female one, and that sort of stuff.
I'm glad I asked you that.
Yeah, but they all start from the same base. One of the first thing that I'll do is I'll just take this character, for example, and I'll just like inflate it. I always like to use a transpose line with right click in this one here to do that. It's a really quick way to inflate. And you can see that now like everything is inside of the character, except for like a few things sticking out, but whatever. And once that you have this, I'll pretty much start from there and build on top using like clay buildup or that sort of stuff. So you see, you can simply like paint, and whatever like, wherever you paint, like it basically like shows like what's underneath. And this is how like I build like the top layers and everything.
So this is the armor pieces now. that
Yeah,
you're
exactly. Or
building.
like, I mean, it could be whatever you want, right? But in this instance of this character, yeah, it would be like his armor and everything. So you see, I'll just use like clay buildup to kind of like give the volumes and everything. And then I'll use dam standard to just create some like inverted volume to create like edges.
Yeah.
Or not using alt, it will create just like the cavities and everything. So I can pretty much just like get like my volumes, get planes. If you use like ins and outs of dam standard, it'll create your volumes like this. And to give it like a smooth surface, I won't even like start using like H-polish yet. I'll simply use smooth, because smooth will smooth out your mesh, and a smooth mesh already gives it a more like hard surfacey look, if I can say. So yeah, or you can use like H-polish. I'm just saying smooth really does a lot of work, especially in the blocking stage. You don't want to always have to change your brushes, so it's really nice that like the shift key gets you there.
What material are you using for this for you? Because you obviously want the reflectivity.
It's in Blinn, I think.
Yeah.
You're just
Oh
using a
yeah, I'm
blend?
in Blinn right now.
You're just using a blend?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or at this point, I'd say I'm not looking too much at the material. It was really just like I used the first thing that came here. Like if it was maybe this material, I would not sculpt with this one. But or you could. It could be a challenge.
It would be interesting.
The next ZBrush challenge, you have to
there you
sculpt
go.
using this material
Wow,
only.
that would be something. Here we go.
It actually might help because the normal map of that material, you would see the actual level change.
Yeah,
I'm not sure I can look at that for
But you
3 hours.
you like blind yourself
yeah,
by
you'd
the end of the
probably-
competition.
Yeah. It'd probably get you squirrely-eyed after a while.
Yeah,
Sure.
pretty much.
Yeah.
I haven't heard someone say that in a dog's ear.
Hey, well, there you go.
Squirrely-eyed.
I haven't
Here
heard
we
that
go.
one either in a dog ear. There you go. I'm bringing it today, people.
So another tool that I like to use is basically just curve strap snap. It's been in ZBrush for a while, and I just find it works really well to create like any kind of like belt-ish kind of thing. Or you can even be more than just a belt. You can basically just use it and say like, oh, you know what? It's like a metal trim for like another piece of armor or whatever. And it's just like a quick way to have like a mesh inserted on your model and do whatever you want with it afterwards. And I just love it. You just have to be conscientious that you need to use a mesh that doesn't have subdivision or like layers. This is why, once again, in blocking, I try to not use like too much like layers and whatnot, or have subdivision levels to my mesh to be able to use tools like this.
Yeah, you're keeping your freedom open.
Yeah, exactly. So the same way with the curved tube snap. So if ever like you need to have like a tube or something more tubular like this, you can easily place it on your model, and then you go to your move brush and you start like placing it around and just figuring out like where it goes. I don't mind for the stretching and that sort of stuff at this stage, because it's, once again, I'm just looking for shapes and forms and whatever. I'll never stop myself like polishing too much. And so even if like the tube has a stretch, it's like whatever, it reads as a tube, so it's fine, right? So stuff like this. There's another one that I like to use as well. I don't have it in my quick shortcuts though, because I don't use it often, but it's still a nice one. Curve quad fill for doing like vast but thin regions. I just take something like this here. This one I might actually split it into another subtool just to have a bit more control over it, like maybe to reduce the thickness. And like I could, if I want to sculpt in it, now maybe the resolution is not superb, but something that I can do pretty easily is, for example, let's say hide this polygroup. I'll do a mirror and weld. I'll do an auto group because I know that there's like a mesh in the middle now that I did my mirror and weld. This way I have one continuous shape. I can just Z-remesh it. Let's say 2000 polys. That might be a little too much. There we go, a little better. And from there, you can simply like give it like a quick, whatever, a quick shape to simulate like a cape. Just to be able to say like, oh, well, there you go, that's a cape. And I use a lot of my imagination at this point to tell myself, oh, it looks good, it looks really credible. But you know what, as long as it reads, I mean, I'm good enough for like the concepting point.
I like the joy with which he said that. He said, I use my imagination, and he laughs.
People, you can use your imagination for the entire presentation. If ever I do something that looks ugly, just tell yourself, wow,
no, it's in my head.
Good. Yeah, exactly. So there you go. This is just a nice, like, quick way to create like somewhat of like a cape for the character.
So you don't put the little, it's interesting, you don't put the little silhouette window that we have. That's interesting.
Yeah, I've just like...
You've just gotten used to doing it.
I just got used to like always like pushing back the character and that sort of stuff. It's a great feature.
We work in a similar fashion, you and me. It's fine. Carry on.
There you go.
I'm just making an observation for myself. Thank you.
No problem.
It's all good. It's all
Probably
good.
stop talking out loud when I'm thinking, huh?
Hey, well, we're all good here. So yeah, something else that I like to do is just using the good old extract. Especially for doing like just taking part of a mesh that like really does like follow the silhouette of the character. So I'll just like mask like part of it. Let's say like this, and I'll extract it. And most of the time I don't even look at like the result. I'll just like commit to the extraction right away, because like I do often, I'll just grab whatever like subdivision it gives me. Sorry, not subdivision, but like mesh or shape it gives me.
Yeah.
Always run it through ZBrush to just get something. Most of the time, it's to get a lighter like density of polygon. Mm-hmm. And the reason is because with a lighter density of polygon, you just have more like flexibility into like melting the shape away and redoing the whole shape. It's just because like the brushes react more vividly, or they're more reactive to the shape. So yeah. So once you get this here, I'll put it into double again, and you can simply like start moving it around, get like a hood shape pretty rapidly as well. And in the idea of conceptualizing things, it just like helps to really go fast and add stuff on top and whatnot. It's kind of weird. The pressure is very low. Like I have to press like super hard to get something.
Oh really?
Anyways, whatever. It'll work. But basically, yeah. Like I'll do that, and this is just like the first step. You continue to do that, or like I said, use your imagination now and just tell yourself like, wow, that looks pretty great. But yeah, that's basically the tools I actually would use to create some of those meshes. I sometimes for like stuff that I know that are going to be like floor meshes, like especially like shoulder pads and that sort of stuff, I'll go grab like the IMM primitives, maybe like the sphere, let's say. Insert sphere. There we go. And I'll just add them on top like this, split them into their own subtool afterwards. And after that, I can simply like start exploring the like its shape in a very like typical like way of like sculpting the volumes and that sort of stuff. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's like it's really hard. The pressure doesn't seem to actually go like pretty.
Really?
Yeah, I'll try to. Well, you see, if I actually just like make the Z intensity like higher, it actually works a little bit better.
I'll tell you what, we modulated it because you said you were so fast, we wanted to see if we could slow you down a bit. How's that for on the spot?
Yeah, I guess I should not have said that, eh? I shot
could,
myself in the foot.
We could try restarting the Wacom driver and see.
Yeah.
Got a controller on that thing.
Well, I mean, it's not really gonna like stop me enough, I'd say. So it should be okay. But whatever. This is not really a demonstration of the whole process. This is just me like showing like a few like quick tricks that I like to use while doing concept. And yeah, and of course, I mean, just to say that Dynamesh is always my friend. At any point, if I do like a transformation to the mesh that's going to like just like hinder my my resolution to create like volumes and stuff, of course, I'll always just Dynamesh whatever I have in this instance. And so at this point, I'll actually end up having, like I'll end up like creating something like this out of just like using those tools. Everything that you see on the character right now, I'm like pretty certain doesn't have like one single tool that I just didn't show like right here. So it's all about just like figuring out like what looks good, exploring like the designs and everything, and then you have like your character in this level of detail, which is, like I said, since I'm using tools that are pretty simple, you can get there like relatively fast if you like know what you're going for with the design and everything. So you can have like this whole group of character done like pretty quickly. And once that you have them, then you can start really figuring out like what looks like, how they can be like different but similar at the same time, right? Because since they like a group of this, like a character called the Four Horsemen, they have to look like they're part of the same group, but you don't want to do 4 times the same character, so you kind of like, you have to find like what makes them different one from the other. Like Death here, for me, the example, like my goal was to make him look kind of like a necromancer. So all of his like armor, they kind of look like skulls, or like animal skulls or human skulls. Even if it's just like, it's not really like a head, it has kind of like a skull-ish aspects to it. Whereas War, right beside him, had to look more like a dark paladin. That this is what I was going for, right? But I figured that out while I was sculpting the characters, like the look of them and the look of their armor and everything. Her was more like elegant, that sort of stuff. And Famine here was more like disheveled, fallen knight, that sort of stuff. And those are all things that I pretty much like figure out when I'm sculpting the characters inside of ZBrush, because it gives me a little bit more time while I work on like maybe like finding my shapes. I find that like it gives times for my brain to just like see, like to just figure out what I see and what I like, and get to something that I find is a good direction, something that I will commit to push further afterwards. At this stage, I'm not done with the blocking though, because something, especially when it comes to printing, something you want to block is you want to block the final pose of the character pretty much right away. So, for example, like this is like the next target in my process. I'll try to have the character posed in the blocking. So you see, like if you look closely, it's still the blocking. I didn't do anything more. Well, I mean, there's now a horse. That's something more, but it's...
He's got a brush for that.
Yeah, exactly, the horse brush.
IMM horse.
He blinks.
IMM horse.
Horse.
Processing, and there it is, IMM horse.
And it's a really good brush. Thanks for adding it to ZBrush. And
It's our pleasure.
Yeah, no problem. But whatever, I mean, the horse was the same process. So it's just rinse and repeat the whole thing, but just start from horse. And the idea is to be able to get to this, this thing right here. And the way that I go by is that I'll just take, for example, my posed model, and I'll decimate it. I'll create polygroups just for like some of the sections, even like if the section is merged, like this belly section here, I'll take it. And this way, from like a character that stands in an A pose, it's really just a matter of like moving the character around and finding the right composition, because since they're in different like polygroups, you can always just use like the transpose line, control click on it, do like a bit of a blur, like a masking blur, and you can always just rotate the character around until you pretty much like put it in a pose that for you looks like it would make for a great composition at the end. I'll go into detail of like the posing later on a more complex character, but this is just to say that from the very, very beginning, I want to know where I'm heading. Like, it's very important for me. It's a thing because like it gives me confidence, I'd say, to commit to my character and to push forward, because the next step afterwards, like the polishing and everything, they'll take like much more time, right? And if you commit to do something that's going to take a lot of time, I find that it's always better to know like where you're going, so that you're not too much in the dark, or at least less in the dark.
At least clear about your intention. Let me slip a quick question in there for you. How do you circumvent or overcome the hardship of the hard surface parts when you're posing that? Let's say you had like an elbow pad or a knee pad in this case. How are you avoiding the sort of distortion?
It's a very good question. If I could have almost asked you to ask this question for my next step, so that's pretty great.
It's not even scripted. I just, this is what we do here.
Yeah, exactly. I think we were mind reading as well. Yeah, because this is where I was going.
Brothers in Z. Brothers in Z.
Yeah, exactly. Brothers in Z. Basically, the idea is that this blocking here, it can stretch, it can do whatever it wants, and like I don't really care with it, because the thing is that if it does stretch, I'll know that it's something that I need to change on the design before I go further into like polishing. So it's really the time to make those mistakes and to see what's really going to work or not. And especially when it comes to the final pose of the character, well, I'll know that like if I actually do something like extremely exaggerated, well, I have to have the design kind of like work for it at the same time. So this is the one thing that's cool about sculpting, is that sometimes you can also sculpt for the final pose, actually, not for like every condition of like the movements and everything.
Right.
So this is kind of like a one little like cheat thing that's kind of fun in terms of like matching design with 3D print and statues and whatnot. So if you look at this character, for example, it's kind of hard to say because it's still like pretty like blocky, right? But you can see how like the back of the calf armor actually goes inside of the thigh armor, while this is kind of like, for me, a good demonstration that in the posed character, or at least let's take the one that looks good, in the posed character, well, in this section here, I'll need to maybe like cut it just so it allows for more space before I do the polishing.
Yeah, especially if you've gotten that deep. This is the biggest problem I see with hard surface. They go too soon trying to do the cool polishing parts. And then once they get moving, they're like, this is all not working together anymore. And then now you're reverse engineering, trying to go backwards.
And that's the thing that's fun, is that if you know things ahead, I mean, you won't fall like in these pitfalls. But at the same time, I mean, I did fall in a couple of pitfalls over my career, and I still do. And there's always a way to fix it afterwards, and it's fine, right? It's not, there's no like real point of no return. It's just like, you might save like a couple of hours maybe if you just like think ahead.
I think the thing to be careful of for people who are just getting started is burning out on artistic sort of stamina.
Yeah.
And then just realizing, oh God, I have to go backwards, and like now I don't have the energy to fix it. That's a reality for a lot of people.
Yes,
so
indeed.
They feel so deflated, that they don't know, what have I done?
Yeah. So this is just like giving you like a little bit of like extra stamina, I'd say.
Yeah. Excellent.
One thing I can say also, by the way, is this was my T-pose for the horse. Like I already knew I wanted the horse to do like a I think it's called counting when they go on their legs like this. Anyways, whatever.
Oh.
Like I wanted the horse to be kind of like in that position, so I actually modeled him in this position, knowing that the end result is like pretty close to this. I'll do that sometimes, not all the time, because like it's fun to work on a character that has like a nice gesture and everything. But I found that for the horse, like it was inspiring enough to do it in that pose here that like that's what I went for. It just helps for the final posing of everything, I'd say.
Speaking of the pose, I like Death the way that you have handled the sort of inflection or the bending of the abdomen region. A lot of people don't do that. He's got do you see that, Paul? You see how he's like lurched over a little.
Yeah, I was inspired by the Napoleon painting.
Yes.
Like him on the horse.
Now that you say it, it's so stark, it's right there.
Yeah. So,
oh look, they're all there together.
Yeah. And the
a whole community of killers.
Put them a bit more lined up. There we go.
It's very powerful to see them all there lined up like that. Look at that. There's not even enough screen space for that stuff.
Yeah, but also I think it's like very important to be able to view them as a group like this, because once again, for the same reason I said earlier, you kind of like want them to look like a unit, like a legion. Really.
Oh,
like
they look like a legion, all right,
Yeah.
Absolutely, it's great.
Yeah. And also an extra thing, I like to think about like how they're gonna look on your shelf if you have the 4 of them. Like for me, like this is like the winning composition. You know what? Short story. I did an interview. If you go on neoapocalypse.com.
I've been sharing it. I've shared it.
He's in the chat right there. That's what he's doing. Don't think he's texting his friends. Well, he is. He's communicating with all of our friends.
Thank you,
in the chat,
Paul.
but
Yep.
he's not
Sharing it in the
doing
chat right now again.
Yeah, and if you check the interview on the website, you'll see that the statues are in the background. Well, I didn't even did it on purpose, but I ended up placing them in the exact same composition.
Oh, really?
Just
That you
by
had 'em there.
default.
Just yeah.
Because I think it's just like when I did it, I figured out like this was like my favorite composition, and just naturally I went back to like this composition when I placed them in the background
can
for the
see that.
interview.
Looking good, man. Looking good. I feel good just looking at this thing.
There you go.
Incredible.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, at this point, if you feel it, I mean, you've pretty much covered like the design of the character, at least the main shapes and everything. You've designed the pose. You've designed them as a group. So it's like, okay, well, when you have this, now you can pretty much like decide to go into something that's more like a commitment. So like the polishing and everything.
Excellent.
Yeah. I actually also used this like image almost to show it to a couple of my friends to ask them like, do you think there's like potential into creating this project and maybe like get the interest of the people? Because since we're doing like statues, like people have to like buy them to show like there's the support, right?
It, yeah.
So it's like, do you think like there's going to be like a clientele for this?
I think the answer is yes, 100%.
Well, thank you. I appreciate this.
I have to sit back when I say that. 100% yes. There is an audience waiting for everything.
But you want to have also like something to show them to be like, because you don't want to tell them like, oh, I have this idea about the 4 Horsemen. You want to have like something that you can like show them and be like, hey, what's your feeling about this? And I find that this is pretty much the quickest way to get like the more bang for your buck, let's say, right? Because like you didn't spend that much time. It took a while, but just imagine if that was like all in polish, it would have taken like months and months instead of like maybe like a few weeks, right? So, and it does like.
A few weeks.
I like his your concept of
like,
time is.
Hey, this is a few weeks. For everyone else, it's about 6 months.
I'd like to say I think he might have a skewed concept of time here.
I just think because he's perfected his workflow. So that's what I'm saying. This is the one that you guys get double buckled up for Marco, man. This workflow, he's perfected.
He's not messing around.
Yeah.
Well, it's all, like I said, it's all based on efficiency. Like I'm not stopping time when I work. It's really just like, I think I figured out like a few of the shortcuts that just like help me like go through a few steps that sometimes like you can get lost in and that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So at this point, this is, for example, like the polishing of death in its A pose, T pose, whatever.
This is the polished version that we're looking at right now on the screen.
Yes. This is basically like the final version. The only thing that's not there for this character is like the cape. This portion of the cape is still like the blocking, because I knew that this character, like the cape, let me get back to the actual final model. The cape of this character is extremely flowy and it really plays with the composition and everything. So there was like no purpose for me to make this cape in symmetry or in T-stance, right? Like I knew that like it was going to have like a lot of like movement and everything. So I basically like told myself, well, this is gonna wait for after the posing. Which is actually like one of the subject that like I wanted to talk about, is basically just knowing like when it's time to do something in T-pose, when it's time to do something like in posing, right? And I find that there's like many school of thoughts, because I know a lot of artists that they're going to pose like the naked character like pretty early, or like kind of like not early in the sense of like blocking, but early in the sense of like the elements on the character. Like pretty early they're going to pose the character and just finish it like in their final pose, which is absolutely fine. I think this is like a great way of working.
Sure.
But you know, like when you're working with a lot of subtools, stuff like that, sometimes, like especially when it's like hard surface and everything, sometimes you kind of like want to have like a lot of your character finished in T-pose before posing him. So you kind of like just have to be like, you have to make choices, I guess. And for me, the cape was one of those choices. Let's do it at the end. And the rest, since it's pretty much like symmetrical, like I can pretty much do it right away. Or if you know that a mesh is not really gonna bend or anything, yeah, you can do it in A stance right now. Like for example, like the hood part, anything that's cloth here, or like this like upper cloth section, like I knew that in the final posing of the character, it will probably not be bent so much. So it's not like if any modification to this part would make it look like bent or whatever. So yeah, I thought that this would help a lot. So in the same idea of like, what do I do now? Another one is just to think ahead about like what you want to use like in symmetry. And something that I do for my character, oops, not this one yet.
Sneak peek.
This guy, sneak peek. So there's something I do for my characters is that the position of the arm and the position of the, at least the position of the upper arm and the position of the thigh, I try to make sure that it's somewhat like on a straight line so that from the Z axis, I can still work in symmetry for those models here. So if you use local symmetry and you put yourself in like Z symmetry, at least you benefit from having this like model be in the scene on the character, but be somewhat of like an orthographic view, so you can actually just use the symmetry. For parts like the gauntlet or the greaves, like the tibia section, for those, what I do is I always take my blocking, I place it into like another scene, and I construct those pieces in orthographic view like this here. So this is done like fairly easy because it's just a matter of grabbing like a section of your character. Like you can basically just like take this one here, clone it into its own Z tool. You erase sections of it, like this. And then you basically just place your floor, remove perspective, and you aim for like the center. Oops. All right, like this, rotation. You pretty much just get like a ballpark estimation of like if it's in the middle, and then you just mirror and weld. And if you haven't lost like too much volume, well then you know that like you're pretty much like smack in the middle of your mesh. You can even like move it like this, try to just like eyeball what's in the middle, and you see like something like that, you haven't lost much volume. You can always get it back by simply like doing this. And this thing, if I do the high res of this, I'll know that like I can always just place it back on the character afterwards, and like it's gonna fit. It's gonna fit at least 90–95%. So the modification you'll need to do once it's on the posed model, it's not going to be like really big. So this is pretty much like the idea for anything that's not in a kind of like a orthographic view of the character. So basically this was the idea of like, what do you do now? What do you do in pose? So if we jump into, okay, so how do you do all that polishing, like in more precise steps? We can take part of the character, for example. I'll just create a little screenshot of him right there, just as a kind of like an example of like where I'm going with this. And let's just take my blocking, which is this one here. All right. So how do I get from the blocking, or at least like this armor section, to this section here, which is more finished? That is the question. So I'll start by basically just like splitting everything into like auto groups, just to kind of get like only the part that I want to be working on. It's going to be this one here. Activate symmetry. And I'll start by simply like isolating kind of like the section I'm going for. Hiding it, deleting everything that is hidden. I'm using my shortcuts for those. And then I'll just get enough resolution on the mesh so that I can start using polypaint. And what I'll do is I'll just quickly, oops, yeah, this is the good one. I'll just quickly draw the border of it. Also, sometimes I'll draw, if I want like negative space in my model, like let's say like this is supposed to be like a hole.
Yeah.
I'll also mask this portion out. But this is like a pretty like a full mesh, so this is going to be fine. Once that I get this, I simply do a mask by intensity to change my polypane into like an actual mask. So mask by intensity, this is in my shortcuts, this is where I place it. I'll hide this, and I'll just see if there's like a hole in my mask, which there's none, which means that I can reverse this, delete everything. There's subdivisions, so whatever. Delete, and now if I auto group this, I have this section that is all clean and whatnot. And from this here, the next step that I'll take is basically just get rid of everything that is kind of like mid details or actual details. I'll simply use like the clay brush to kind of like get rid of it visually, because the step afterwards is gonna rely on like one of the algorithms. So what I'm doing is I'm just like doing something that I'm sure is gonna help like the algorithm to understand like what I'm going for. So getting rid of like anything that could be distracting, and I'll even start kind of like emphasizing on what's my goal, like what am I going for in terms of the planes of the object. And if you look at the planes, I'm basically like drawing them right now. Like this is what I'm gonna go for. Like you can, it's all bumpy and stuff, but you can see what I'm going for. There's this section, and this one here is split in this one and this one here. Once that I have this, I can even take H-polish just to give it like a little extra clean pass, let's just say.
A very slick series of operations you just demonstrated there without even batting an eyelash. Did you catch that?
I caught it all.
It's a good thing it's being recorded. We can watch it again later at regular
again
human
and again.
speed.
Yeah, I'll tell you, this is really rinse and repeat. This is like, like when I do like my streams and everything, like I always tell people, you always need to start working on like this part, this part, this part.
Right.
And it feels like it's always like this three steps that is just gonna help you in the long run. So the first step was like basically the piece itself. The second step was its edges, and the third step is its planes. So right now what I'm doing is I'm just making sure the planes are readable, and I've used the edges right before to kind of like insist on where there's a plane change. Once that I have this, I'm actually pretty much ready to get my, my final mesh for this character. So what I'll do, my final mesh will be a ZBrush, but right now it's kind of like a Dynamesh. So what I'll do is I'll simply start to kind of like select the areas that I want to be really like the different planes. Since they're really visible, because I've used the cavity and everything, I can simply go over like this, hide them, give them different poly groups. There we go, and now all of my planes have like these like different sections here. And by the way, I mean, there's going to be other planes on this character later when I'm gonna be placing the mid-level details and that sort of stuff, but this is pretty much like what I do is I break down like what's major shapes and then what's like the other like less, how could I say that, less like elemental things, let's say. So I do these because what I want to do is before I ZBrush, I want to put the keep group option on. And what I'll do is I'll simply click ZBrush with my keep group, and it's going to give me, oops, I actually put the resolution too high. So let's go back and try with maybe around like 1,000 polys. Yeah, there you go, okay. So I'll just do that again. All right, so for most of it, it's pretty good. I got like a little artifact here, and I could actually just like try to fix it by hand. Or what I could do, sometimes when I get like stuff like that happens, I just try to use like the other ZBrush option, which is like the one where you click Alt.
The Alt key?
Yeah, the Alt key, exactly. I cannot use it in my shortcut. You see, like it actually gives me like something different, so that's good. So when I get this, sometimes you'll get like meshes like this, but most of the time you can actually get some pretty good results, and you can always fix it by just reapplying another ZBrush on top of it, and you get something that's actually pretty clean, really fast. So you might say like, oh, but you lost, like it got like like smoother and stuff. And yeah, sure, it did, but I mean, it's never like something that you cannot like repair relatively quickly. You can get back like the shapes that maybe might have been like too smoothed. Like even when the algorithm works like from the get-go really quickly, I find that it's always better to just like start really working on having the shape that you want, the silhouette that you want at this stage here. So now you have this, you see it's much cleaner. You can already see like where I'm going in terms of like having it polished. So what I'll do is I'll do a little bit of the same of what I just did before, but like with this mesh now. So I'll start kind of like making sure that like the curves, the elements of this object are more in line with like the final result that I'm going for. So what I'll do is I'll look at it from like different views, try to make sure that the line flow of my mesh is kind of like clean. Like if you look at this line here and the line that it does, at this point I'll try to make sure that like this aspect of it is good, because it's probably going to be like the final state of this portion. So that was for the line flow and that stuff. And now, once I got the entire piece, once I get the edges correct, so 2, now I work on 3, which is the planes on the object. So what I'll be doing to get something clean is I'll actually hide them one by one using their polygroups once again. I'll just use a material that is just easier to see. And I'll just H-polish things so that they look like flatter, more hard surface. I'll do this for every section. I use a combination of Alt and not pressing Alt when I use H-polish.
Hey, what does the Alt button do?
It kind of like just like, instead of like pushing in the shape, it kind of like elevates it like a little bit higher.
Wow.
Both of them are trying to flatten it to a certain like average, but there's still like a direction that it goes. And I find that it's really good. And another thing that I find that using the Alt key does is, for example, let's say I use it like this. Look at this part here. If I don't use Alt, it's kind of like crushing this part in. But if I use Alt, it's elevating it without really affecting like in the radius of the brush also. So there's that you can use at your advantage actually. In this instance, I find that just like hiding sections like this is like works well for me. And although they still like have like they're a little bit bumpy between themselves, this will be fixed in another step I'll show like right after. And the final one, like for this curved section here, I won't be using H-polish because the thing about H-polish, since you're flattening stuff, sometimes you might lose a bit of like your curve. And one thing that I find really works well for me is using the smooth brush, but by removing the shift key from
The Alt Smooth.
yeah, like the Alt Smooth. I call it the Smooth Relax. Like I don't even know if it's its name, but
It's a smart polish smooth brush, which is now it's called officially Alt Smooth.
Alt Smooth.
Because we shipped it now, you can actually make that your default.
Can I still call it Smooth Relax?
Yeah.
I call it
relax.
Awesome.
In fact, that's how I explain it. I explain it more as like you're relaxing the topology
Yes.
more than pushing.
You're holding
I
the
like to
shift
go a
key?
little step above and say it's like Superman. I'm not pushing through the wall.
Oh, look at this.
I'm just only climbing on the wall like Spider-Man. Just
Very good.
relax.
Paul
Just
Gabriel.
relax.
So I could not have said it in better words because that's what I'm trying to do with this mesh here. If I use H-polish, like I'll probably start like crushing the this like curve here. It's not a big curve, but still H-polish is gonna start like flatten stuff, and I might lose like the volume that I have. And Alt will kind of like elevate it, but add like planes to it. So I feel that like using, so it's smooth and it's not the normal smooth, because normal smooth is basically going to like flatten your mesh also, you see? But by using, so you press Shift, you click on the screen, you remove your finger from Shift, and now you smooth. And it kind of like does not, you see, it didn't destroy my volume, but it did relax pretty much everything, so that like I get rid of like the more like uneven aspect of this mesh. So now you see it kind of like looks pretty clean.
It's like a Tuesday afternoon smooth, very relaxed.
Exactly. It's a Taco Tuesday afternoon smooth.
There you go.
And yeah, there's one last thing that I do in order to really like bring it to like its maximum level of polishness. But this one requires that I create a thickness for the piece first. So I'll just do a little panel loop. I'll use my shortcuts once again. I pretty much put all the sliders to the minimum. I just decide of like the good thickness, and I press ignore groups because I have polygroups, right? And I don't want to create different meshes. I want it to be all one mesh. I click panel loop, and now I have my thickness here. So it's pretty cool. That's pretty great. And from there, I'll just make sure that all of the hard edges or hard corners, or at least the corners that I want to keep kind of like sharp and stuff, I'll just make sure that they have creases. So first step, I can already tell ZBrush, hey, you know what? Everywhere there's like different polygroups, I want you to add creases. So crease polygroup. Now there's like dots on the lines here. I know this is gonna stay sharp. And I do the same for every corner I want to keep sharp. My favorite way is to actually use the ZModeler tool. So I just switch to ZModeler. If you go on an edge, you can choose crease edge, and then you just click every edge that you want to keep hard. You could also use polygroup by normal to kind of like let the software like basically choose where to press to put the polygroups and stuff, creases, well, polygroups and creases. But I kind of find that doing it manually like this works pretty rapidly as well, so there we go. So now that we have that, this is pretty like important in the pipeline, because what it does is that if you subdivide, so you see I'm subdividing, but I keep the hard edges where I want, okay? So this is where I'm going for with the creases. But I'll just do one last step before doing that, and it's to add this final level of smoothing. First of all, I'll create a store morph target, just in order that I can come back to this state of the mesh if I want. And what I'll do is I'll go in deformation, and you see like all my tools are all like one next to the other, right? So everything I'm showing with my shortcuts, I just get to do them like extremely rapidly because they're all there. But just to show you, like this is where you would find it, polished crisp edges. And with polished crisp edges, you'll see that all of my surfaces that still have like artifacts and stuff are gonna get pretty much like to their like most smooth that they can get. So polished crisp edge, I don't put a lot. And you see, it's already like much smoother. See, before, after, works pretty well. And the reason why I did a morph target, it's because if you look in this area here, it got pretty round, and maybe that's not what I want to do. But with...
You made that look really simple. I just want to say to you.
It is simple.
Oh, yeah.
It is simple. It's just that like you kind of like have to understand like the way to go by it so that the tool really like responds the way that you want it to respond, right? Like you have to give it a chance, and this is why I did the preparation before to really make it like the kind of curve that I want and the kind of edge that I want, so that this like more like automated process just makes it clean like instantly at this point, at this like moment. And yeah, so I'll just grab my morph brush, and because I saved the morph target, everywhere that I paint, I'll just get like the shape how it was before. So like I'm pretty happy with the rest of the result, but like that curve here was a bit too polished, and this is how I prefer it. At this point here, I pretty much have the mesh how I want it to be with the surfaces all cleaned and everything. So I can go for the actual subdivision of the mesh. And what I'll do is I'll simply tell him to do a crease level of, let's say, 1, so that my first subdivision stays a hard surface, and my second subdivision actually starts to smooth where my creases are, so that it creates kind of like a little like round bevelly like aspect to my mesh. If you find that this is too round, you can always go back before it smooths, putting to 2 of crease level, give it another crease level, and then when you subdivide, it gives you that round crease, but this one is tighter than the first one. So it really just depends on like if you're going for tight creases or more rounded creases, basically. So you have this. The next step afterwards, it's like another chapter, let's say. It's more about like creating the mid-level details, because now you have your mesh, and this is the mesh you're going to keep for pretty much the rest of the time that you're working on this character. So at this checkpoint here, you need to like know that you're not really going to need to do much more like changes that have to do with the topology of the mesh. So we're really going into like sculpting now at this point.
Committed.
You're committed. You're committing to something.
Committed.
A point of no return.
Well, like I said, it's kind of like point of no return E, but at the same time, there's kind of like ways to go at it, right? Because I can always just like ZRemesh what I have, tell him to keep the polygroups, reproject. There's a lot of tools that I can have. It's just that they're not going to be the quickest way to get to your ends, right? So you kind of like want to just be thoughtful at this moment because it's kind of like point of return E, yeah. So yeah, at this point, since we're not really going to change the mesh anymore, that's when I'm going to start using the layers just to like be able to do like before and after on my work. So I'll add this layer and I'll start to add mid-level details to this mesh. My style is that I always start with like some trim details, and the way that I go at it, I'll just show you the way that I did it for the Horsemen, is basically just to isolate the edge, shrink it, and at some point...
Control-Shift-S, people. Control-Shift-S.
And Control-Shift-X for grow and shrink. Grow and shrink.
Exactly.
X for
and once that you have actually the section you want, you can mask it, and you can just inflate this. Once again, I'll use the transpose line with right-click, and it's just going to inflate it, and you're going to get like this, this edge right off the bat. And something else that I could have done right before that is save a morph target of this, inflate it, and then I can decide that maybe some parts of the model should not have like an edge. So I can basically just like give it like a certain like look. It's like offsetting from just like a constant edge like this. And or something I like to do sometimes is it's once again, it's the morph brush. I just put the focal shift to like almost 100, and you just like take a section, maybe like this one here, and you just press like not too long on it, and you can have kind of like a halfway like of the length of this. So it just adds like a bit of I don't know, like offset.
Yeah,
variation.
Yeah, variation.
Sure.
Yeah, there we go.
Different type of layering happening.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There seems to be a theme today with layering.
Are you watching?
yes.
Leather upon leather with the God of War team, and now he's
true.
doing it.
Yeah, correct.
We find ourselves in the shot here live
Yeah.
with Marco Plouffe.
It's all about layers.
ZBrush Summit
all about
2022.
layers.
Yeah, I think the next time I come here, I'm just going to talk about layers. I say it right now. I come here for the 4th time, just
There you go.
layers.
That's the theme. Layers.
So
Rule them all.
one layer to rule them all. So this is one thing that I like to do. Another way that I like to play with the trims here is to take a mesh that would actually, kind of like damn standard when you use Alt, it kind of like pushes thing out and it pinches it. Well, this is one brush that's called Orb Crack that I like to use a lot. And when you use Alt, it basically does this kind of like edges here. And something that I like to do is, for example, I can take, I'll just use another layer. Once again, I'll mask like the front, but I'll keep the thickness masked. I'll just blur it a little bit. And you can basically like take a section of your mesh, maybe a little bit bigger than that, and you can basically like manually add like
Like a ridge.
yeah, a ridge. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a ridge to it. Sometimes you can even like mask like a portion of it like this. And then when you draw it, you have it already like sectioned off like this. I find this actually works pretty well as well. And so yeah, this is something else. I actually did it on the character here. You can see. This is how I did this portion. Of course, there's always the masks and everything. This is one of my favorite. Anytime that you want to just like have your entire surface kind of like I'm gonna say layer again, I'm sorry.
It's fine.
And I'm like
Yeah.
layer in
Do it.
or whatever. You can just like mask it off. You find like a shape that's appealing, that follows the line flow of your model. All right. You can have it like this. And my point is going to be to, all right, there we go. It's clean enough, I guess. If you move it, you can just like add like a different like layer on the model. But there's many things that you can do before that. You can like move it just like on the side here to kind of like create like a tapered leveling, let's say, layering, whatever. And this is basically this is done with the move brush and using the Alt key, which is basically going to push the mesh in the direction of the normal of the polygons. I really love this brush. And something else that you can do to the masking, just to have more variety, is at this point, maybe I'm gonna lower the resolution here. At this point, you can always play with the blurriness and the sharpness of the mask to kind of like round things off. So you see I blurred and sharpened. I'll do it again. And the more that I do it, the more that like the shape itself becomes round. What I like about that is because it rounds the corners here. So sometimes I'll actually do a couple of them just around the corners, and then I'll remask another portion that I don't want it to be rounded. And it creates this kind of like shape where like these corners are rounded, these ones are a bit more sharp. So it's just more things that I can do. More things that you can do is you can also blur with the control key, which is basically going to blur in one direction of the mask only. And it creates for very cool like fall off effects when you push it in. So you see that like you have the rounding, and then like this edge here is sharper. So this is another like profile of the mask that it creates. And I think it's pretty cool. But for the example, I'll use this one. And I will basically move it like this. There you go. So now I have like this detail here. I always like to give it just a little smooth afterwards. This may be too much. Just to kind of like blur it a little bit so it's not too sharp. And now you have this. And this is basically like the way that I go by using my masks. You can of course do it like much bigger than that. You can go and pass like planes. It doesn't need to be isolated into like a section of your mesh. So there's like a lot that you can do in terms of like using mask to control your shape. That does not look good, but it could be. But if you use your imagination,
Well placed.
I have that song in my head.
Don't do it. We're gonna get it. Don't do it. Don't do it. We're gonna get tagged on the feed.
So yeah, another tool that I like to use. This one is a fun one. This one I get a lot of reaction when I use it. So trim hole. So basically what it does, it just like takes the angle of the camera and it just like pushes the mask like forward. But if you actually move the cursor and you take like an angle to it, sometimes you can have like instantly some like pretty cool like effects. Like something like that. You can always smooth it or add some lazy mouse in case like you have like strokes within like this section here. But the idea is that you can basically push your mesh like this and get some pretty cool results just by like experimenting with like the angle of the mesh and the movement of things, that sort of stuff. So you just play around, figure out, you'll find cool stuff to do. And the other one is trim front. Trim front is kind of like the same idea. It's gonna take the angle of the camera, and I like to place a small circle alpha on this one. And what you do is you just calculate like the angle of your mesh, and if you use Alt, it's just gonna bring everything to the same level depending on the angle of the camera. And this is how I do like those kind of like details here. Like it's pretty rapid to be able to do something that looks like it's just responding to like a portion of the surface. So I like it.
It looks
Old
cool.
school.
Are you kidding
Those are
me?
old school ones.
Yeah, yeah.
Those are old school.
Little nibs.
They are. But you see, it's like, that's just to say that like the things you can do with like simple brushes in ZBrush,
Yeah.
depending on like the angle of this and that or whatever, you can join just a couple of things together and it just like creates a new effect. And sometimes you can fall on like a very cool visual language that you just use for the rest of your career afterwards.
Yeah.
Like I do.
He says, fall into a visual language that you use
Yeah.
for the rest of your career.
That's actually well said. Fall in there like-
I'm glad you said it. Are you kidding me?
Well, you added the first part to it that I was like, oh, that's a better way of saying it.
Sounds like that needs to go on your website.
Maybe, eh? There
Yeah.
you go. I have to hire you guys for like PR and stuff.
Hey, now.
Hey,
Huh?
hey-o.
Heyo. Of course, mold lines is something very important when you do hard surface stuff. Basically, mold lines, I use two profiles of mold lines. The ones that the dam standard gives me, which is pretty much like a round fall off and then like a sharp edge, and orb crack, which gives me two hard edges. So depending on like maybe the other visual language that you used on your armor, you'll decide to go for like one profile or the other. But this is pretty much like what I'm going for. So you take orb crack, you go in strokes, you basically maybe augment the lazy radius, and you'll just get like more control over doing the lines here. So for example, let's say I take it here. I save the amorph target because I know that I'm going to maybe like draw over things that I don't want to draw over, like this thing here. So basically, at any point, I can always just go here. And I can get it back. Actually, sorry, no, I didn't do it correctly. There we go. Like if nothing happened. And this I would do at the end after I'm done with all when my mold lines are done, so I don't do it for every line, right? And once that I have this, I like to add some offsetting or some variety to the mold line so that they're not like just always constant. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll just add like an extra line inside. I'll just take like a bigger radius, and I'll just do like a line on a line. So it has like a portion of it that's been kind of like
A line on a line.
a line on a line.
It's made me think
Layer
of
on a layer.
Dracula for some reason.
And you can just use also the standard brush if you want to do like a lip here.
Little ridge.
Yeah, some ridge.
Really
So
hard.
basically, it's just to say that once you've drawn a line, you can add on top of it just to like make it a little bit more like rich, right? Because you're not going to want to make mold lines like this everywhere and make it too busy. So sometimes what it's fun is to make one line but add complexity to this line, and it's going to make the entire thing look like rich without looking too busy. Yeah, exactly. So there's that. And I mean, the last thing in terms of like the shape themselves, it's pretty much just like IMMs at this point. So the way that I go by adding IMMs is I always create a new mesh, and this mesh I will remove all the layers, all the subdivision levels, and I can actually just start placing IMMs on them. So you just take anything from any library that you have, something that looks kind of cool, and it's just a matter of placing it. Good old IMMs. And once I have this, I just make everything disappear but the IMM. I delete what is hidden, and I have my two subtools here together like this. Once you have one IM in place, this is where I'll be like placing other IMMs using this subtool because it doesn't have layers or whatnot, so you won't have any like warnings of like, oh, you can do this because there's layers and that sort of stuff. So yeah, and IMMs, I mostly use IMMs for like those kind of like small details, maybe like belt buckles or like buttons like this. Sometimes like circular joints on the character. But I try to not use any IMM for like what's my major shapes of my character. That I try to have like agency over it. So it's always going to be for like smaller stuff that like I will be personally using them. So now we're getting into like more like detail stuff. But detail stuff, I find that there's not like really like much to say because in the end, I find that like detail is more about visual language than anything, because all my detailing, most of my detailing at least, it's all done using just like the simple brush and placing alphas and stuff like that. So it's really a matter of just like figuring out shapes that you think look good on your character and trying like placement until like it actually like resonates. There's an old theory about like details and choices and that sort of stuff, right? But that's a whole other book for sure. But the idea is that you can get like a lot done just by having like a few alphas that you find inspiring and just like testing like how does it look in like certain areas. The one tip I would give is a bit like I said for the line, is try to not add details everywhere. Just have specific areas that like you add details there and put your details right there. So it creates kind of like a balance of like empty sections and sections where there's like details and whatnot.
Can I interject for a second?
Some breathing room.
Yeah.
Speaking of breathing room,
Yeah.
what's the resolution on this piece right now?
Like in terms of like the
Polygon
polygons?
count. He's asking polygon count.
How many polygons are on that thing?
It's
There are no subdivision levels,
10
correct?
1 million.
Ah, okay.
1
He's on
million.
subdivision.
1 million. How many subdivisions you got on there?
5.
There you go.
And he doesn't remesh, right? You don't remesh this because it's already
No,
remeshed.
it's already
No,
remeshed.
this
those
is
that are
this is
asking
really
in the
like
chat.
the final mesh.
Yeah.
The
That's
final
it.
mesh.
And it's quite simple. I mean, I just wanted to draw people's attention to that. It doesn't have to be sort of a gabillion polygons. It's only a million.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks that tight and smooth because of all the planning. I just wanted to pause and give people that kind of moment to reflect on that.
Yeah. You know what's interesting also about
tell
that is you. It's in terms of like working fast, you have also to be smart about like how dense your mesh is, because like even the best computer at some point is going to start to have problems.
Like chug
And,
chug a lug me.
Pardon?
Like chug chug a lug me.
Yes.
Hey, listen,
Absolutely.
we're here live.
Yeah. So basically, Jesus Christ.
I really
Yeah.
threw you off with that one. I'm
Polygons.
sorry.
No, that's
Polygons.
good.
The polygons. Sorry, I really took you.
We're all good.
On the chug chug a lug me really threw them off.
You got me on a journey right there for a second. I didn't need it. I needed
A flashback of a different
He needs some
kind.
reflection time on that one.
Exactly. I was on the
Take a water break for a minute here.
Take a sip. Everybody have a sip.
Everyone have a sip. You at home too, take a sip of water.
Cheers. Brought to you
lot
I should
by-
have taken the cue that it was actually time for water.
It wasn't, but you had a look on your face like you'd got, like I'd taken you back to like some sinful nights in Montreal.
Exactly. Time stopped for me. I went on
I
a
did, I
2 years
saw it,
journey.
too.
Now I'm back here. I'm just
Like
like, whoa, what's
Brutopia, circa 2002.
I'm on stage right now making a presentation. What's happening?
Exactly. So, at this point, what I wanted to say is that since you talked about like resolution and that sort of stuff, for me, like there's 2 things I want to say. The first one is that to be able to be efficient, I never try to go over what's my need in terms of subdivision. So what I'll do, I didn't show it, but what I'll do is when I start adding subdivisions to my mesh, sometimes what I'll do is I'll just take an alpha that is kind of like an alpha that will be probably like the smallest that I think I'm going to go for my needs. And I'm just going to check like how it reacts to the subdivision, to the maximum subdivision that I give it. So maybe I would have like subdivide to 4, place that detail, realize it's too pixelated, subdivide to 5, check that detail and see like, okay, you know what? This has enough resolution for like the renders that I'm going to go for at the end.
Contextualized resolution, not just
Yes.
resolution for the sake of saying I have like, this thing has 10 million points, but in context, right?
Absolutely, and this is, I think, is very important because you'll get to really know like what you're going for, what you're aiming for, and you won't create like excess, especially in terms of stuff that is very like costly for like your processor or your RAM or that sort of stuff. And in the end, you'll be able to work like on a full-size character like Death in one scene just because you made those smart choices. So you basically have to tell yourself, well, okay, what am I doing? Am I doing a full character? Am I focusing on the head? What are the renders I'm going to show at the end? And know that like you might not need to go like so crazy on the details in this area or the like resolution or,
Yeah, I've
or
said
that sort
that
of
for
stuff.
years. Intent should drive your workflow, and
Yeah.
what is the intention of the final product? What is it for? And
Yeah.
what are you trying to make and what for?
But sometimes when you don't know where you're going, it's like you'll let yourself drive by. You'll let yourself be driven by like subdividing just because you want the resolution to
Yeah.
be good without knowing what's
Or
really
chasing design without having a clear path,
Yeah, exactly. And I just want to show you like this example here.
Look at this, Paul. Wow.
So like once again, like this is the print of Death, right?
Captain Happy, I call him.
Yeah, Captain. Exactly.
Time for the last ride.
Hey, he's having a laugh. He's having a laugh. It's not because he looks crazy that he cannot.
Someone's going to be having a laugh at that final moment. It ain't me.
Exactly. Or maybe everyone. They don't
Perhaps.
know. But basically, the point of like showing you this, well, first of all, is because I think it's lovely. But the second reason is because talking about like what's the result that you're trying to get, especially when it comes to printing, you're gonna want to basically know how small that you can get in terms of your detail,
Sure.
And what's going to actually translate once it's printed. Because depending on like if it's like a 1:1 scale, 1/4, 1/10, whatever the size you're going for, at some point you're not gonna want to go like too fine into the details because it's just gonna look blurry at the end because it's not gonna print
What
correctly.
size is this thing?
This one is 1/4. So basically it's like, well, I don't know if like people are gonna see, but whatever. Let's say like a little bit more than a 1/2 meter high and 1/2 meter wide. It's massive. It's really massive.
It's gigantic.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well,
half a meter.
If you're gonna do
high,
it, do it big.
Yeah,
half a meter
exactly.
in height.
There's probably like a picture here of like,
And just to break this down for our folks watching all over the world, that is big.
Have one on their site.
That is big.
yeah, there was a, like I would need to, I know where there's like a picture, it's just I would need to look for it, but there's like a picture of like somebody beside the statue, and it's like.
Like how many centimeters are we talking about?
In centimeters?
Yeah.
Yeah,
inches.
like
In inches for the American.
oh, dude,
No,
I'm
you
kidding.
can't
I'm
really-
kidding. How many centimeters?
math.
How many
It's,
centimeters?
yeah, I mean, there's the actual size and the, oh, you see, you know what? There you go. You're asking me a question about technical stuff. It's written right here on this page.
That's what I was hoping.
There you go, dimensions in, well, millimeters. So,
Okay.
there you go.
How many millimeters?
Whoop, 450 by 510 by 840. So yeah, like 1/2 meter in.
That is a big piece.
Yeah, and also 1 meter in height because of like the scythe and everything. Like this one.
1 meter in height?
550 millimeters is like about 21 inches,
Yeah.
close to 22 inches
That's a big boy.
for Americans.
Oh, it's a big
It's a
boy.
big boy.
It weighs probably like close to 70, 80 pounds.
Can I weatherproof it and put it in front of my house to scare the neighbors away?
You can. But I think somebody's probably just gonna capture it and take it home.
That's actually true.
That's what I would do.
Especially where I
actually.
live.
And so basically, the idea is to know like what's the end product. So the end product for this one was the statue you just saw, and because of like the scale, I knew that.
Look what Paul's doing over here. He's just doing a hand job.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
85 centimeters by 81
Going on over
centimeters
here,
by
man.
56
What is-
centimeters.
how is-
Yeah, exactly. Like I see myself in the camera right there, and it's not. I can't even like do it. Like the frame is not even like.
It's bigger than the frame he's in. Okay, so
Yeah.
that gives us an idea. If someone at home is measuring this and put it on their shelf, go ahead.
Yeah,
Like, I'm going to buy this,
Please tell us.
right? How much-
Someone's looking, hey, that goes back to hashtag it, the
Right.
measurement of your desk for Marco's thing. Hashtag
Yeah.
ZBS22.
It's a good challenge. Let's see who can fit it away.
Well, that's the one they're supposed to be sending to doing their selfies. If you got a selfie out there, do a selfie how you're watching us.
Yeah.
Good point.
There's some good ones. I've been looking at them. There's some fun
Look
ones.
at this thing, though. Can you maximize that screen? Look at this thing. Get me off the
He
screen and
can't.
show the
They
people the pony. I mean, geez. Look
Yeah.
at the detail on that thing.
And it's two heads.
Kindari, let's get the.
Yeah, there's
get
two
the-
heads
oh, my
switch out.
Lord.
This one also has like a hand switch out. I have like this one.
Oh,
with
you have a
the-
hand switch out too.
Yeah. There's like the grasping hand and the hand that has the time.
Oh, man, I'll tell you what I
time,
do.
but it's
Yeah.
not sad.
Did you make any compartment for the switching out, or they just there's no compartment for them?
Compartment?
Yeah, I always wonder this with the hand switch outs and stuff and the head switch stuff for collectibles. Why we don't put something in the base that you can store when you're not using the one
True,
hand?
eh?
Underneath.
So it's not just laying on your shelf,
What a
right? You
guy.
pull out a little thing, it's stored
Hey,
there. It's
You
nice.
need to go
it's stored
patent
there.
this. Right
Well,
there.
Saying you're making them.
I want a little LED inside that thing.
Oh.
Yeah, that would be pretty rad.
Yeah, that's the cost then's going up.
Oh, that's me.
Yeah,
I'll customize my own.
Well, for this one, we wanted to go like artist series. It was like more relying on like the paint of it, like
Yeah.
more like traditionally, let's say.
Look at this thing.
Yeah,
I mean,
but it's
I
nice.
want to be that guy. Look at him.
Happy. I'm really happy of what XM did with the paint job. Like I gave them a lot of freedom as long as they follow like the important ideas of.
You
like,
didn't give them a
color
master.
choices.
Did you just give them a ZBrush master or anything for painting?
I gave them free. I gave them renders. The renders that I had,
Yeah.
and like they did a first pass, and then I was like, okay, well, this like color needs to be like hotter or warmer, and I really just like made these changes in case that it actually like goes a little bit too outside of like the theme
Right.
of like what they are, but like choices for like how the skin would look or like some hues and stuff, or like I was like, you know what, you're the experts, you know how it's gonna look once it's going to be printed, painted, and everything. And like I trusted them a lot in those choices, and you know what, pretty happy with it.
That's a great. Look at that piece.
Yeah.
great horse.
So basically,
Wow, Paul.
to get back on track, the idea is like if you look at details like this one here, like this little dot, or at least you know what, this little dot and this line right here, it's pretty much like the smallest that I would actually go for in terms of deciding the scale of a detail. No, not you. He really wants to be in the shot, this one. I keep going.
Second time or third time that guy's made an appearance. There's something to be said about it.
He really wants it.
He really
but
wants
if you look at it here, like you see, like this is pretty much like the finest line that I will go for. Because when you do 3D printing, you kind of like have to be conscientious about the final result. The same way that like the perforation here on the cape, like this was pretty much like the size that I knew already that 1/4 would look good. Because if I go actually smaller, they would start to look really like shallow, and it would just not look good. So you really have to stop yourself sometimes for like the scale of things and that sort of stuff. And I like to go in between. I like to go as small as I can so that like it's nice for the renders, but also smart so that like it prints correctly. So I'm really trying to hit like both worlds at the same time as much as I can. So that was for the details and that sort of stuff. Let me get back on track. Where was I? Here, there we go. Okay, so yeah, detail placement. That's really just like what there is. It's all a matter of like choices, and most of it I do just by placing alphas like this. And sometimes, since I have a form lab at home, sometimes I do like test prototypes of sections.
You have the Form 2 or Form 3?
Form 2. I wish I had a Form 3. It looks really good. But you know what? My Form 2 is still like incredible. The details are really nice. Yeah, and I can do my prototypes and stuff, and I can see that like things work well. And then when I send it to like a production studio or whatever, I know that like it's gonna look like okay at the end, even better, right? Because they're better than me. It's just at least I tested.
Is the perforated cloth that you were showing, was that micropoly? Someone was asking what the cloth wasn't. It was
like how I did it?
Yeah.
Oh, well, you know what? That's exactly what I was going to show.
Look at this.
There you go.
This stuff writes itself.
That's
all in the same mindset. That's incredible.
Look at
I couldn't
that.
have scripted the thing even if I wanted to.
Yeah. So basically, the way that I go at it is I'll just like use UVs for a lot of like this stuff. The moment that like a pattern really gets like over the entire character, I'll rely on UVs to do this. So I'll start by working on a clone, of course. Even ZBrush tells you to work on a clone, so you listen. I'm gonna bake everything, make sure it doesn't have any subdivision levels. So once that you have this here, okay, so we see the topology. All right, so basically I'll simply use the poly groups that I have, and I'll just make sure that my front section plus the thickness of it is on one poly group, and that the back is on another poly group. Once that I have this, I'll simply tell him split by poly group, make it symmetrical, and unwrap. And it's gonna go pretty fast. And if I put like a texture on it, you'll see that, there we go. So I have like this texture, it's already placed symmetrically, if that's a word. And if I do flatten, you can see it's already symmetrical, so you're all good. I think Danny Bell yesterday like showed a bit of like the UVs, and you see like you
drawing the arrows.
Pretty much like orient them right away so that it really goes in the direction of your patterns and everything. And I find that like if you just like cut things on their seams, or for metal plates, you cut them on their like what's the front, what's the back, you'll always have like the chance to put things in the direction that you want for it to look like.
I love that our presenters are watching the presentations and watching the presenters and coming back and talking about each other before and after.
Well, I was just trying to make sure like I don't repeat stuff too much as well.
Great.
And like when he showed that, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna say a quick word.
I think this one is a great one to compound. Go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. So once I have this, you just copy UVs, you put it in your object here. So paste UVs. And so now you can actually like have the same texture here just to confirm. You see, you're good, you're good. And the way that I go by is I'll create a morph target. I'm gonna work on a layer. I'm gonna go into surface, noise. I'm gonna tell him use UVs. I'm gonna use the plugin here. I'm gonna take spheres. I'm gonna say okay. And then I'll just, since we're doing something hard surface, I'll get rid of the noise. I'll just take the effect by itself, and I'll reduce the plugin until I have like the size that I'm going for. Let's say this one. I'm gonna augment. Actually, I'm gonna not use any poly paint, and I'm gonna play with the strength to know like how deep I want to go and like if I'm going up or down. Once I got this, I click OK. Now it's on my mesh. For the moment, it's just a preview. But if I actually apply to mesh, it's going to apply this detail on my layer here. From the layer, I can duplicate the layer to double the intensity. I can merge it, so now it's on one layer. And from there, I can apply also a morph target to this, hide my layer, and just draw where I want this detail to appear. So you get like a lot of control by having it done all over your character, and then you decide where exactly you want it to appear. Like right now, it looks kind of weird like this. Like maybe it would be best if it's actually like maybe inside of a section, but that's basically like the way that I go by to use
This guy's on fire.
Yeah. So many tricks, many tricks. There's a lot more.
They call him Marco Many Tricks Plouffe.
There you go, Marco of all trades.
Yeah, Marco Many Tricks.
Smorgasbord of tips and tricks.
Many tricks on a Tuesday. Tricky Tuesday.
Bring the
Tricky
complicated
Tuesday.
ones.
Right, Tricky Tuesday, live with the ZBrush crew.
So yeah, I mean, like, that's pretty much like all of the major tricks that I use when it comes to creating details and medium details. So from this point out, if you just use everything and you apply it to all of the meshes of the character, you'll pretty much end up with this like fully finished model here. Like once again, nothing that is on screen right now, or I'd say easily 99% of everything that you see on screen right now, I've just shown all of the tricks in the past minutes. So it's really just a matter of rinse and repeat, going at things, and there you go.
Time check for you. You got about 19 minutes.
19 minutes?
Yep.
All right. Well, okay. Well, I have like 2 sections I wanted to talk about. The last one is not really that important.
Take your time. We'll
So
get there.
I'll just jump right into like the last portion that for me I think is really important for like the entire presentation in terms of posing the character in composition. So we're going to talk about posing the character. Yeah. The demonstration I'm going to do is something that takes a lot of time if you want to do it well. People think that like posing the character should be done like quickly and that you should not have to redo anything, and that's not the case.
That's a
the
bit
idea,
of a fantasy.
Yeah, exactly. It's a fantasy.
Yeah.
But you know what? Sometimes it works pretty well, and sometimes you have to redo some parts. But the thing is that you have to be smart about it as well. And for having tested it on like close to like 60, 70 models, complex models, this technique works. You just have to know like what to be careful about. So when you're posing, actually, you know what? I'll just say I'm going to do a little demonstration here. But if you want to see like the full process on a character, just go on chaosmasons.com. Go at the bottom. Go on our links. You'll find our YouTube page. And on the YouTube page, if you check our playlist, there's one that's called Mantis.
So you're doing YouTube. I shared your Twitch. So your YouTube.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Twitch is the videos. It's just they're archived on YouTube as well, right?
They just watch this for free on the YouTube.
You watch them for free.
This is unbelievable.
Yeah, they just have to endure me, and the rest is free.
What
so
a
there
time
you
to
go.
be alive.
Sharing away.
World
Sharing away.
Yeah, and so you know what? While I'm saying this, I'm just going to delete a few meshes, because one thing that you have to be careful when you're working with Transpose Master is that if you have like a lot of Z tools open, like I have right now, Z tools of like millions and millions of polygons, you kind of like have to be careful because it can actually make the software crash, because this is like ludicrous, the amount of like things that I have in the RAM in this instance. So let me just delete those. All right, and I'll open my...
And of course, for the younger viewers watching, you would have named all of your tools, correct?
They're named.
Just checking.
What a named your subtool. You mean PM3D_69?
Yeah, we know this, you and I.
PM3_62
Yeah.
is not a name?
No.
No, okay.
No.
Final 7, final 8,
Eight.
final, really the final 1.
Really,
6.
really the final.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, final.
The final with the change.
This time it's really the final, like the name is just like.
And then my
massive.
last name, because they're submitting it to me as a student.
Exactly.
Not good.
Yeah.
Name your files.
So basically, yeah, the YouTube was just to say that like I show the entire process. I spend like I think 4 hours posing like a fully mechanical character. So the proof is there, the technique works. But just to give you a bit of a taste of like what I do is first of all, I always try to make sure that like the design of the character allows for bending parts and that sort of stuff. So for these characters, I really try to make sure that like everything around like the waist here or like the elbow. It's like a material that can be flexed, and if not, if it's a joint, I kind of like test during the blocking that if you turn the object around the joint, that it's not going to penetrate with each other, right? So clip into each other. So I did that. I did this for this guy here, and for things like, for example, the shoulder here, I really try to make sure that things are kind of like modeled in a way that like things can slide into each other. So you see like all the plates here on the shoulder. Basically, if the character like lifts his arm, well, the plates can slide into one of each other, and this is going to give me a lot of flexibility for placing this character into the final pose. So I try to make like smart choices like this. But at the end, like my technique still works for like a lot of different design decisions, let's say. I'm going to show you. One thing that I can say as well is that I try to separate my model into sections. So, for example, like the arms, I'm going to section them like this. The legs are going to be sectioned. And I'm gonna actually, sometimes I'm gonna pose like just a portion of the character. Like I could be posing this first and then the rest afterwards, or even like a section like this. And the reason why I don't pose everything at the same time is just to give me a break. I'll place like a portion of it, and then I'll commit my transpose master, and I'll save my project, and then I'll go back to transpose master. Because the thing is that at the end of the day, I have the final posed model already done. Like I'm posing the character over this model here. So it's like, I figured that out. What we were seeing at the beginning of the presentation is like, there's no unknown, or almost no unknown for me. So I just need to pose my character.
You know your end results. You know
Yeah.
exactly your end finish line.
So if I pose my character on top of this guy here, there's nothing that's gonna really like go wrong, or at least nothing that cannot be like easily fixed afterwards. So the way that I'm gonna go to do this is I'm going to figure out a section I wanna pose. Let's say this one here. I'm gonna go into my Z plugin, transpose master, here, oops. And I'm simply gonna click on transpose master. It's going to make all the calculation necessary to pose the character. And then I'll start by putting into polygroups elements that I know that I might actually pose one at the same time, or in two parts, let's say. The entire underbody of the character will be one section, and the plates will be its own section on top of be able to separate them, what is like the belt section and the thigh section. So I'll work with these three things here. Since we're posing the character in, since we're posing the character in a non-symmetrical position, I'll actually have different polygroups for everything that's like symmetry and whatnot. And the legs here, the underbody, I'm gonna start by just like really quickly masking a portion of it just to be able to select it rapidly. I'll try to have it like follow kind of like the flexion areas of the body. Then I'll do the same for like the upper part here, like this. So those are my sections, and this one I'm also going to make non-symmetrical. All right, and I will add my final pose in this file here. Warning, before committing the transpose master, you have to delete this extra subtool that I added, or else it's gonna confuse the software. So just a reminder to delete this one here. But basically, we have our final model. I just need to pose my polished model on top of this here.
It's also important to note that you've posed it in a way that is not overtly extreme away from the standard pose that you had at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's not going to be going from like an A pose to something that is drastically different.
But it could though. It's just
It
that
can, it can.
you would need to plan ahead, and like the pose, you would just need to make sure that like if the character is really going to do like
Right.
an exaggerated like elevation like this, well, his giant shoulder maybe is not a good thing, right?
That's exactly what I was hoping you were going to say.
And also, I mean, like in real life, it's like you have this much armor, you don't have flexibility, so don't choose like a position that doesn't work.
Right.
Anyways,
Broken the context of that design.
Absolutely. So what I'll do is I'll start by placing the pivot. This is pretty much how I start like every posing of my characters. I'll just figure out like that just trying to make sure that like the angle is like somewhat what I'm going for. This one actually is going to need to be rotated a bit like this. All right. And when it's time to place the limbs, I'm going to actually add a layer just to make sure I can go back. And I can simply mask, blur. And a little warning over here. It's always best to make sure that the topology of what's going to bend is not drastically different one from the other. Because when you're blurring your mask, the spread of the blur is going to act differently if your mesh is dense or not dense. So like the blurriness, and I made it on purpose to actually make a little mistake here. But if you look at the tube here, it's very high, and the thigh is much bigger than that. So because I blurred, once you're going to place, like you're going to move the character like this, the bending of the cloth, well, it doesn't really show, but the bending of the cloth will act differently on the high density mesh and the low density mesh. So this is something you just have to be a little bit careful about. And maybe you'll want to remove some subdivision levels of your mesh just so that it kind of like, it's more like averaged with the rest.
Yeah, in essence, make every first level be relatively the same type of polygon size.
Exactly that.
So you're getting consistency with your bend and your masks.
And all of them as low as possible without degrading the design.
Yeah, keep that silhouette.
Man, the three of us, we should have a show. Wait a minute.
Wait a minute.
That's like, we'll talk about during the pause, I think. Yeah.
Chug a lug me.
So the
Now you distracted him again.
so at this point, what I'll do is I'll take some of my meshes that were maybe like bent or that doesn't make any sense if like that they're curved, and I'm going to use the occasion to kind of like just straighten things out a little bit. And this is something you can do also like at the end, but it's also something you can just do once that you know that like you've placed your thing correctly. You just like try to get rid of like any impressions of stretching just by replacing things correctly like this. And this is also why I made some like more like some smart choice into like what's hard surface and what's flexible, because areas like this, since it's going to bend a lot, you just really want to make sure that it's like an object that if you bend it, it's not going to like remove the nature of like what it is. So I'll do this. For example, I'll mask the armor here, and I'll start like, putting things back into like place. And the reason why I do this with Transpose Master is really just because like I get to move everything at the same time. I'll still do a pass where like each of my subtools, I'll just scrutinize them and see if I've added any like bend. But this is basically like how I go at placing them all together like this. And also sometimes I'll just hide them, and I'll mask portions of them just to maybe like add some mass that I might have lost during the move. And once I replace the mesh, if I see that my mesh are interpenetrating like this here, well, this is why I said earlier that like this entire like layering of object is really helping, because when you layer stuff, you get to place them back afterwards. You just have to find like something that looks just like
Would make sense.
that makes sense. Yeah, exactly. And also, by the way, don't shy away from using the move brush to move your things, because the things like move brush, the problem that sometimes like it can have is that if you use it like on on like a hard surface object, sometimes it can bend some areas that you don't want it to bend. But the idea is that pretty much everything can be bent without looking bent, except for stuff like primitive shapes. So stuff like the circle here, the moment that you bend it, now it looks absolutely off. But like plates that don't really have like very primitive shapes in it, you can move it and it's not gonna look like that bent. So the idea that like you cannot reshape a hard surface object is not true. You really can. It's just some stuff is more sensible to the eye, and some is not really sensible. So you see, this plate, which was hard surface, well, I pretty much like bend it to kind of like fill the holes and do all that stuff. And this is how I'm actually gonna go by to place the entire character. And the one final thing, how much minute do I have?
I would say probably
7 minutes.
7 minutes. I was going to say that. 7 minutes.
7 minutes.
All
As
right.
if I was timing you.
So the one thing I'll say is that I've shown that like I use like polygroups and masking and blurring to move my object, but like I said, sometimes the topology is just going to make things not really move equally. Like for example, if I take this upper body part here and I just blur it and move it, so you see that like all the meshes are kind of like separating from each other and you're creating negative space. And I think a lot of things are not really like bending accordingly. So what I do to average this mask, but to the same kind of like spread along all of the different meshes with their different density, is I place my mask by hand, just using the mask with the dot stroke like this. So really just by hand. And the reason why I do it by hand like this, it's because the radius of your brush will apply the same strength of mask everywhere on every vertices at the same intensity. It doesn't have to do with like the density of the mesh. It really like just makes it much more equal. So you kind of like have by hand to make that kind of like fade or that gradient. But once you do, and you don't need to be like extremely like precious about like the spreading. After that, you see the way that it's gonna bend, it's not gonna do like all the separations and everything because the vertices were pretty much allowed the same kind of like movement and range. So you do this, you place it into position, and now you can actually keep your mask and already start to kind of like move the mesh around to give it more of like a flow that's gonna look maybe less like bent. Sorry, I keep pressing on the right.
That's great. Just keep doing what you're doing. Looking good.
There you go.
Marco, Many Tricks Plouffe here on a Tuesday. Tricky Tuesdays.
There you go.
Magic fingers.
ZBrush Summit 2022.
I really want tacos now.
Well, there you
Actually, you know what? I'm going for Mexican after.
Hey,
There you
thanks
go.
a lot,
There
pal.
you go. Look at that.
Perfect.
We're here all week.
Perfect.
Think of us while you're eating that taco. We're down to, we got about 90, what is it, 180 seconds are left here, 2.5 minutes.
Perfect.
What did you say, 3 minutes? About 3 minutes left.
Okay, well, you know what? It's pretty much done. The idea is that like because of like that mask, I was able to move things in a way that like is not like really spreading everything around. Once I apply the transpose master to this, like I'll just do it.
Don't forget to delete that mesh.
Yeah.
Don't forget.
There we go, like
Forget to
this.
delete.
Here, brother.
Boom. Transpose. So this is like the step where like if I had like a ton of Z tool open, it might actually be problematic. So now that I actually remove from the RAM most of it, it's gonna find correctly like the mesh, it's gonna apply the changes, everything should be fine. So you see it's already moving things around.
Best part about this, you get to see all of his subtools.
Somebody at home wants to know, what happens if I change my mind after I do that?
Change your mind about what?
Change your
About
mind.
the pose, yeah. What happens if they change their mind? Then
Well,
what?
I mean, at some point you kind of like have to commit, and this is why you do a lot of iterations
You could
with
do a layer.
blocking until you figure out which is the one you want. But the idea is that if you actually pose it like this and you still have changes to do, you can always go back and transpose master afterwards and replace it and do changes and whatever. So you can go in transpose master as much time as you want over this process until you figure out that the final posing of your character actually looks good.
Yes.
So there we go.
At some point, you must commit. Don't be
Yeah, exactly.
commitment-phobic.
Plus, I mean, at this point here, like there's still like some stretches in some areas. Like I'll still go over like areas that were maybe a bit problematic, and like move things around just to remove a bit of the impression of the stretching. But the idea is that those are the most problematic sections that I just showed you. The rest is much more of a breeze, and you don't get much like distortion and that sort of stuff. So it ends up being like a really cool, like a really viable way for posing characters that are pretty complex, and like any kind of character. Like, I mean, if you're posing a character that's organic with like anatomy and everything, you're still gonna have to like rework like how the anatomy is after like the flexion. So the same idea that stuff have to be like fixed after this step is applicable to organic or to hard surface.
Okay, let's finish with your model in its entirety on the screen, perhaps. Show the
Yeah,
whole
well, actually, you know what? I'm kind of like, I'm loading this model here.
Okay.
And
This is one of my faves.
yeah, the idea is just to show you that like at the same time, characters, depending on like their style or anything, every trick that I showed here can be
Applicable.
applied, yeah, all the
can
things.
be applied to any style or anything like that, or at least the range of possibility is pretty vast. So for something that like looks compact like this, I'll use the same method to get the same results and
favorites.
everything. So the sky is the limit.
Wow.
It's an angel, right?
It's the sky is the limit, and it's come to that time when we reach for the sky and stretch a bit and say thank you so much, Marco. Many tricks, Plouffe here. Merci beaucoup, monsieur.
Ça fait plaisir.
Superbe. For our French correspondents and people at home, he's got a big smile on his face. We appreciate it. I'm Louis Tucci here live for the ZBrush Summit 2022 with Paul Gabriel. We're going to send you off, and we're going to do some giveaways. So thank you again to Marco Plouffe, and I'm sure their fans along all over the world are saying yes, 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 more. But we'll be back after this with some giveaways, all right? Thanks so much.
Awesome.
Thanks, Mark.